Hey guys, it's Demi here with Thoughtful Dots. Thank you so much for being here and for supporting my YouTube channel. If you enjoy this video, please do me a favor and hit the thumbs up button. If you're new here, please subscribe to my channel for weekly tutorial videos. You can also find me on Facebook and Instagram at Thoughtful Dots, as well as on Etsy, where I sell color palette ideas, beginner guide ebooks, and other helpful downloadable PDFs. All of their information can be found on my website at www.thoughtfuldots.com. Please be sure to share this video with anyone who may find it helpful, and I hope you enjoy this tutorial. Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be doing my favorite rainbow theme. So if you guys have followed me on social media for a while, then you probably know that I'm obsessed with rainbows. So anytime I'm doing more neutral colors, I always end up going back to rainbow. So that's what we are going to do today. And I'm painting on this 8-inch piece of wood. Oh, and before we get started, I just want to remind you that all the products used in this video are linked in my Amazon shop. So I will leave a direct link to the Amazon shop in the description of the video. You can also find this by going to my website, which is thoughtfuldots.com, and clicking on the Tools I Use tab. So these I actually got from Amazon as well. They came in a big pack. I think there's like 20 of them. So I will add these to my Amazon shop as well. They are a little bit on the thin side. They're not like perfectly straight. Like they kind of warp a little bit because they're so thin. But for the purposes of tutorials, I feel like they're perfect for me. So depending on what you are using these for, you might be able to use these. But yeah, this is 8 inches. And I've already painted the base coat black using Folk Art Multi-Surface in Pure Black. And I've already found my center, so you're gonna wanna go ahead and find the center using whatever method works best for you. And for the colors, we're using Tuscan Red, Orange Flame, Primary Yellow, Festive Green, Blue Raspberry, and Purple Pizzazz. So those are the colors I'll be using for the rainbow, but obviously you can use whatever variation of colors that you already have. And then I'm just going to be using this paint palette for the colors. Okay, so let's get started by drawing on our guide marks. So again, I already found the center, so just use whatever method works best for you to find the center. And then I'm taking the 16-point mandala stencil and just placing it over our center. And then just push down, take a chalk pencil or a watercolor pencil. This is General's chalk pencil. And we're just gonna start making our guide marks. So I'm sure you guys, most of you have seen my new series called Featured Artists on my page, where I have other artists come on my YouTube channel and do a tutorial. And one that's coming up is by Brooke. So that's coming up this week. So after this video comes out. So I love these featured artists because they send me their videos and I watch the whole tutorial through, and I actually learn something new every time, which is so awesome. And in Brooke's video, she was doing the guide marks, and I learned something really helpful from her that is gonna help me in my tutorials, which is when using these mandala stencils. So there's these circular guide marks that go all the way around, and I typically don't use them because they're a little bit farther spaced apart and I like them to be closer together. So, but for the purpose of filming tutorials, what Brooke did, which I really loved, was she just took the stencil and did one row of the guide marks. And then went and made them with the pencil and the compass. So go to our center. This actually works best on a Lazy Susan, so I'm gonna use this. This is also linked to my Amazon shop. Okay. And then we're just going to put it on the mark there and then go around. So there's those guide marks, and then since I do want a couple more, I'm just gonna go back through and kind of eyeball the center of each of those so that we can have double the amount. Whoops. Okay, so there we have our guide marks. Thank you, Brooke, for that tip, and be sure to keep an eye out for her tutorial, which will be coming out a little bit later this week. It's still morning, so I'm having my coffee in my favorite mug. It's about 6 a.m. here, so I'm just waking up still. Okay, so I will be using my Happy Dotting Company dotting rods and then my nail stylus tool set. So I will leave a link in the description of the video below with a chart of these sizes so that you can convert these to whatever nail stylus set you're using, because they are all different sizing systems, unfortunately. And then the Happy Dotting Company, they have the sizes. Obviously I need to clean this, But yes, they have the sizes right on the rod, making it super easy for you guys to follow along. So let's get started. So for the center dot, I like to do a bigger center dot. So that's the 12. And I'm just gonna pour the paints as we go. So I'm starting with the Tuscan red and the size 12 tool. So you want a really good amount of paint on the tool to make sure you get a nice circle. If you don't have enough, then sometimes it can make the circle come out uneven. And we're just kind of tapping. And then I like to go over one more time. We're not gonna be pressing as hard. We're just gonna kind of get the paint and hover over the center, letting that paint come off the tool. And that just gives us a nice, perfect mound. I'm just grabbing a paper towel because that's what we'll be using to wipe off our tool in between each dot. My workstation is a disaster right now. I wish you guys could see it, but after this video, I am cleaning because I cannot live this way. Okay, let me think here. I don't have a pattern really planned out, but I was thinking about this and I kind of wanted to do a larger center. So I've said to you guys before in other videos that the dots, the layered dots going around, like the smaller ones, going around the center dot is like the hardest part for me. Especially when they're small. I don't know, that's my most tricky part for me. Okay, so red, and I'm gonna go in rainbow color order. So I haven't opened this orange yet. Orange Flame. This is kind of a brighter, more vibrant orange. So if I'm not sure what tool to use, sometimes I just like to practice. We're gonna try this 4.5. And I'm gonna take the orange and we're just going to make a dot. And I want these as close to one another as possible. So these bigger dots can be a little bit trickier when it comes to the end here. So at this point, I'm kind of eyeballing this to see about how many dots I think I can fit there. And I think I can do 3. So what we could even do is like do 1 dot. Okay, so that worked out pretty well. Thank goodness. And I'm gonna use the same size tool, the 4.5, and do the yellow color. primary yellow. And we are just gonna go in between every other dot. So by going every other dot, it just kind of helps correct any spacing issues and just helps keep everything more lined up. So there's a pretty big gap there, but we'll just fill in that gap with some little micro dots. Now I'm taking the festive green and I'm gonna go up to the size 5. Oops. I meant to skip that one, but oh well. So for this one, I was either wanting to use white or gold as an accent. I still haven't quite decided yet. So I'm leaning towards gold, but let's see. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, blue raspberry. So I'm taking the 6.5, and we're actually gonna go like down lower, right in that little nook. Then I'm taking the purple pizzazz. And I'm gonna try doing some walking the dots. So I'm gonna do a purple dot above all of these blue ones. And right now the guide marks are not lining up on anything, so it's just kind of eyeballing the top center of the blue. Oh, that was the large end of the white tool, and now I'm gonna flip it over and use the small end. And we are just gonna walk the dots down. Okay, and I've decided to go with a white accent. So I have a little bit of white from my last project, so I'm gonna use that. I'm gonna take the large end of the pink tool. And I'm just trying to line this up with the tips of the purple petal. So I just made a dot with the large end and I'm flipping it over and dragging down. And then I'm gonna use the small end of the pink tool to now make a dot and drag. I'm gonna do it one more time. And each time we're making the lines a little bit shorter. So for the first swoosh, I'm taking the large end and making a dot. So the center swoosh will kind of be bigger than the rest of them. And I'm gonna clean my tool off because it's getting a little bit of buildup and that affects the size of the swooshes. So now I'm just taking the small end, dip it, and then we're going to dot and drag right next to the larger middle one. And then we're gonna do one more that is slightly shorter. And we're just gonna repeat that all the way around. Okay, so we're gonna take the small end of the pink tool, and now we are going to do those little micro dots in between the yellow dots, and we're just kind of filling in that extra space. And then for this space, you can see it kind of goes vertically. So we're just gonna do it like that. Okay, so I'm not sure how this is gonna work out, but we're just gonna go for it. So we're gonna do some swooshes, and I'm gonna do red, and I'm just gonna pick a guide mark and do a big dot with the green end, and then flip it over and use the small end to drag it down. And we're gonna do that on every other vertical guide mark. And now we're gonna take the orange using the same large end of the green tool. And we're just gonna dot right. It's kind of like in the little nooks of the red. So shorter than the red. And then we're gonna flip the tool over and drag down the orange dots. So dot, dot, drag, drag. We're just gonna do that all the way around. Just wipe the tool off, and then we're gonna do the same thing with the yellow. So these are just gonna have a tiny little tail. Little commas. Okay, then we're gonna take the purple and we're gonna go in between each of those patterns that we just made. And we're lining all the tips on the same guide mark so that they're all the same length. And then we're gonna take the blue and we're gonna do the same thing. We're just gonna go a little bit shorter. And then lastly, we're just gonna do the same thing with the green. So cute. I love little swooshes. I also just love rainbow. It's so fun. Okay, for the next part, we're gonna take the size 7 tool and the red, and we're gonna go just above each purple swoosh. And we're gonna go every other guide mark. So just on top of each purple. If you get ripples in your paint like that, that means you need more paint. So I'm just going back over that, and I'm gonna pour myself a little bit more red. Okay, we're gonna take the large end of the white tool and get the orange. And we're gonna make a dot above each large red dot. And then we're gonna flip it over and use the small end of the white tool and get the orange. And we're just going to make some swoops. Next, we're going to take the large end of the blue tool and the yellow. And we're going to do 3 dots like that, like a triangle, right above the orange dot. So swoops can either be made with a tool like we did for the orange, or a brush. So next I'm going to show you how to use the brush. This is a shorter, thinner brush. This is US Art Supply #1. And so I'm going to take the yellow, just dipping it lightly in. We don't need a ton of paint. I'm actually going to switch the camera angle so that you can see a little bit better. So we are just going to push down and bring it down like that. We're just getting close to the orange, but trying not to touch it, just so that that paint doesn't run together. If you let the orange dry first, then that might make it a little bit easier. In case you do accidentally touch it, it won't run together if it's dry. So it really just depends whatever you're comfortable with. You can use the dotting tool for this and just do the same way that we did the orange. Or if you want to use a brush, I prefer a brush. I feel like it's more smooth and gives like a more consistent shape compared to the dotting tool, but that's just me. Same for the next part. You can either use a brush or a tool. I'm going to use a brush. If you are gonna use a tool, I'd recommend maybe like the larger end of the blue tool, and you're just gonna take the paint and start down here and kind of work your way up into a tip. But for this, I am going to use a brush, and I'm gonna use the same brush, the #1. And I'm gonna get the green color. And just start at the base and push down, and then kind of let up on the pressure as we come to the tip. And I'm just making sure that the tip of each petal ends on the same guide mark so that we're keeping everything the same length. I'm just gonna keep this camera angle for a minute because we are gonna do one more set of brush strokes. But first, I'm gonna take the large end of the blue tool and the white, and we are just going to make some little accent dots. So at the tip, and then we're just gonna walk these dots downward. We're just gonna do that on each petal. Okay, there we go. And then we're gonna take that same brush, the small number 1, and we're going to take the blue and do the same thing. We're gonna start down at the bottom, and we're getting close to the green, but not quite touching it, and then we're going around those white dots. So these get a little bit harder when you get towards the outer edge of the wood, because you just want to make sure that you have something to rest your hand on to make it more steady. So I'm pushing it more up towards the top so that I can rest my wrist. And then I'm also putting good pressure here on the Lazy Susan because I don't want it wobbling. So it's all about where you're putting the pressure, and you just want to have a very steady hand. Okay, so now we're going to take the large end of the green tool, and we're going to take the purple, and we are going to make a dot just below. So all these petals are on this guide mark, so I'm just going to make the purple dot right below that guide mark. So I'm making a dot with the large end and then dragging this down. And then I'm gonna smooth out those corners a little bit. This might actually work easier if we do the dot and drag method, so let's try that. So we're just dotting and then dragging. Okay, so that actually worked way better. So we will do that instead of using the small end to drag. Just dot, tap a couple times to unload that paint, and then drag. And we are doing this on those vertical guide marks. And we're gonna take the small end of the green tool and the white, and we are just gonna make a dot and then walk the dots around the tip of that purple swoosh. And then we're gonna take the large end of the green tool and get the blue And we're making the blue dot just like a little bit higher. Like we're not doing it right next to the white. We're doing it just up a little bit. It's gonna give us more of a point, and it's gonna bring our pattern a little bit closer to the edge there, so there's not such a gap. And then we're gonna flip it over and use the small end of the green tool. And just walk the dots. Okay, and now we're gonna use that same brush, the size 1, and we're gonna do some more brush strokes. So we are gonna go with the green. And we're gonna start at, I'm gonna move the camera again. So we're gonna start at the tip. So I'm pushing down pretty hard to get that thick, and then I'm lightening up towards the end. And again, you can use a dotting tool for this, same thing. You'll just start at the tip and then work your way down with the dotting tool into a point. Now we're going to the yellow, and I just wanted to mention that if your paint starts to dry out in your palette, it's totally fine to add a drop or 2 of water just to moisten it. We're not trying to change the texture or consistency, so we don't want to, I mean, you can add a flow medium if you want, but you also can just add a drop of water just to moisten it a little bit. So next I'm gonna do the same exact thing with the yellow. And we're gonna go just a little bit shorter. And I'm just kind of eyeballing, because I know in my head that I want to fit yellow, orange, red. So for spacing, there's yellow, orange, red. So I think it will be perfect. I might have to like make these a little bit thicker because I don't want there to be extra space. So I'm gonna get more paint and push down a little bit harder to get thick swooshes, because yeah, I just wanna make sure everything's good with the spacing. So the tip of this brush is like kind of flat. It's not really pointed, so that makes the tail end of the brush strokes not as pointed as I would like. So I'm gonna switch brushes to a little bit bigger and a little bit longer of a brush that has more of a point. So I forget that these brushes, they come in a set, and I forget that there's different types, like there's the detailer and the rigger. So these are both number 1. Obviously this one's a lot smaller. So I can't remember which ones in the set they are, like the rigger or detailer or whatever, but I'm going with a little bit larger number 1 for the next part. And we are gonna get the orange. And we are just gonna do the same thing. And I'm gonna go a little bit shorter on these. That's not thick enough. I want them to be nice and plump, so I'm getting more paint. And we're really gonna push down because I want these nice and plump. And I know I have 1 more red, so I just want to make sure that we don't have too much or too little space left. And we also want the brush strokes to be coming down into the point a little bit further down each time. And that will kind of fill in that space there at the bottom. If you want big, thick, plump brush strokes, you need to have a lot of paint on your brush. Otherwise, they'll be a lot smaller and thinner. Okay, and now we're gonna do the last one with the red. So if you really load your brush up with a lot of paint, then I feel like you have more control over the size of the brush strokes, because you can just, if you push harder, it's gonna be bigger, and if you push lighter, it's gonna be smaller. So it really is about just learning how the paint and the brush work together and pressure. Because right here, I'm really pushing down, and then towards the end, I kind of lighten up. So I push because I want nice and thick at the top, and then goes down into a more of a point. Okay, we are almost done. I'm out of white paint, so I'm just gonna mix a little more. Okay, and so I'm gonna take the white and the green tool, large end of the green tool, and I'm just going to make a dot that's in between this, and then I'm just going to drag the tip down. I'm gonna clean off my tool, it's a little dirty. And then I'm taking the small end and making a shorter swoosh. So these are similar to these ones here, just a little bit bigger. And then making them a little bit shorter each time. So again, large end of the green tool. Drag down with the small end. And then we're just dotting and dragging on the second one so that it's just smaller than the first one. And a little bit shorter each time. And we are just gonna do this all the way around. So we are just gonna go in with a couple little accents with the white. So I'm taking the larger end of the white tool just gonna make a little dot here. I'm making it right above that red swoosh. And then I'm gonna flip it over and use the small end of the white tool. And we're just gonna make a smaller dot. I'm not pushing all the way down because I want it to be actually a little bit smaller. So if you just hover a little bit, you can actually control the size of your dots without pushing it all the way down. Okay, and then we are going to, I really love doing this with rainbow, but we're gonna make some gradient top dots. So basically you're gonna need white. So I'm not gonna do the center red dot. I'm gonna start with the orange. So you want whatever color you used for orange plus a drop or two of white. And we just want to make sure that you can actually tell the difference. So I think that's good. I think 2 drops is good. And then we just want to use a tool that's going to be a little bit smaller than the dot. So I'm going to use the large end of the green tool. I'm going to dip it in there and we're going to make some top dots. So we're just going right in the center. So that actually is not enough of a contrast for me. So I'm going to take a Q-tip and just pull that up. And we are gonna mix 2 more drops of white. You want to be able to tell the difference in the colors. So that's better, that's more of a contrast. So I love doing this gradient effect on rainbows because I feel like it just makes it pop so much. You'll see at the end when we're all done with all of the colors, it just looks so cool. Okay, and we're gonna do the same with the yellow. That was a different color yellow, but it's okay. We're just gonna go with it. It's a little bit more neon. And then I'm gonna add 1, 2, 3, 4 drops of white. Okay. I'm just using like a small little rod, but you just want something that's a size smaller than the dot that we made, so the yellow dot. Okay, same thing for the green. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm gonna add just a little bit more of the green color. So just grab a tool that is slightly smaller than the green. And again, when it comes to like making dots, if I pushed all the way down, this tool would cover that green dot completely, the darker green. So I'm just hovering lightly above to make a smaller dot. And that gives you more control over how large or small the dot is. And you do want to make sure that your dots in the center are completely dry before doing the top dots. And I'm just gonna go do these red ones real quick. So I'm gonna take the red color, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm just taking this little rod that's slightly smaller than the red. And we are just top dotting. And now we're gonna do the blue. These ones here. 1, 2, 3. That kind of all came out in one blob, but 4-ish. And I'm using just another rod, slightly smaller than the blue. So if you try top dotting on top of wet paint, your circles might come out not circular. So you just want to make sure they're dry before moving on to this part. Okay, now we're gonna let this dry before moving on to our final top dots. And the last top dots, I'm actually gonna do white. So I'm taking, my tools are filthy. Maybe that's what I'll do this week, is clean them. Okay, so you just want a small end of, really any of the tools. Maybe I'll use a cleaner one. I'll use the small end of the pink tool. And we're just gonna do some teeny tiny white dots. On the tops of all of these. Okay. I'm gonna use the same size. I'm just pushing down a little bit more to get a bigger dot for these ones. So yeah, just remember that you can use the same tool and get a bunch of different sized dots depending on how much pressure you're putting down and how much paint you have on your tool. And I'm gonna go up a size. So I'm gonna go to the large end of the white tool. We're just gonna do those green. And then I'm taking this tiny rod and I'm just gonna do the center of the reds. And I'm gonna take the large end of the white tool and I'm just gonna do one more here. All right, and we are complete. I hope you guys found this one fun. I'm gonna let this dry and then I am going to do a varnish. You can do a spray varnish or a brush on. We also will wait for this to dry and then remove the guide marks. So I'm gonna leave this here. I'm gonna go take a shower and then come back and hopefully it will be dry. We'll see you guys in a second. Okay, So I got a little sidetracked yesterday. So this actually has been drying all night. And now we are going to use a Pampers wet wipe. You can use these, or you can use just like a damp cloth. And we're just gonna erase those guide marks. So I like to go in circular motions. I feel like that helps kind of get in those little nooks and crannies, the harder to reach spots. Okay, and now I'm gonna add the varnish, and I'm just gonna use the Deco Art Duraclear Matte. And I'm gonna use just one of these larger brushes that I like to use for glaze. This one is wet. So I'm just going to pour a little bit of this on there and just work it across. I'm gonna take my Lazy Susan out. I feel like a little bit goes a long way with this varnish. So you can do matte, gloss, satin, whatever type of finish that you want to do. Okay. And for this, I'm just gonna do one coat. So we are finished. I really hope that you guys enjoy this tutorial. If you do create this design and post it on social media, I would love it if you would tag me so that I can see your work. And yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below, and we will see you guys in the next video.